Good morning, Philadelphia. Welcome to another edition of Race on Main. Don't forget to check us out and all our past episodes at raceonmain.com. But before you do that, we have a great show coming for you. We have Superintendent
Michael Chitwood
from
the Upper Darby Police Department. And go ahead.
He's going to talk all about a new initiative that they have to help kids, parents, family members, community people who have terrible heroin issues.
Change is Possible
is the name of the
program.
Change is Possible is the name of the program. He's going to address all of that, and that's all we're going to talk about. It's a big topic,
really
so
important.
Get ready. Good morning, Philadelphia, and welcome to Race on Main. Thanks for joining us. We have a terrific show today. I think it's probably the most famous person we've had on locally, so it's going to be great. Lots of you are going to recognize Superintendent Michael Chitwood from the Upper Darby Police Department, who's going to be talking today about the problems really related primarily to heroin and how prolific it is, not just in our area, but all through the Northeast. So we're very fortunate to have him here talking about a very serious topic. So sit back, grab a piece of paper and a pen, take some notes. I think you'll find a lot of good information that's going to come your way. So before we get started, I want to introduce my brother and my co-host and my business partner, Stuart Race. Stuart, how's it going?
Opening day was yesterday, and although the outcome was not so great for us here in Philadelphia, at least baseball is back.
It's starting. So all right, good. So
I want to get to this because I want to get through it quickly.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to get to Superintendent Chitwood. I want to spend as little time on this as we possibly can.
All right.
Because in light, when I was preparing the notes for the show,
sure,
it didn't occur to me that we're going to talk about something very serious today that requires, it's a serious issue for serious people. So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. I wanted to talk about the Gawker verdict, which is this thing where Hulk Hogan was awarded $115 million because of a sex tape.
Right.
And that's the last I want to say about that. What I want to say in terms of the serious nature of this is what this issue is that maybe people should look at it as.
Yeah.
It's an issue of the right to privacy versus the right of the press, of knowledge. And what it really comes down to, and we can, as I say, comment on this briefly, is what it comes down to is at what level does the subject's celebrity make something that would otherwise be considered private newsworthy? And the law school hypothetical, if take Hulk Hogan out and put the president in there, is that newsworthy? Probably. Is the president of, if it's the junior senator from Wyoming, who I defy you to name who that person is that newsworthy? So the issue is really, when is the celebrity enough to make it worthwhile?
Yeah, but I mean, certain things, whether celebrity or not, are private, period. It does, maybe the president, I get there are certain things that you're going to cross over those lines because as a citizen being a part of this community, you might need to know it. But if you don't need to know it and it is private, well, I don't think it's any of our business. But everybody's going to have a different opinion one way. And I'm not saying stifle the press or anything like that. You know that's not me at all. But when does it become where it's just sort of garbage in the press that they're using to sell internet space or newspapers or whatever?
So maybe the issue shouldn't be the subject of the story, it should be the
content.
The content, what was taking place rather than who was taking place.
Right. Now there's no way to really measure that. So
well, that's why we argue hypotheticals in law school classes, and Supreme Court justices decide these things.
Sure. Yeah, without a doubt.
So, well, that's the Main Street issue. But I want to get to the good stuff.
No, the real quick thing though remaining with this is hopefully Hulk Hogan will enjoy his $150 million.
Yeah. Well, 115, which interestingly was 15 more than they asked for. They asked for 100 million. The jury awarded 115 million. So
interesting.
Maybe the pendulum is swinging a little bit, where the public
is starting to get
in the face
nervous.
of this jury is saying enough is enough already.
Right.
Let's punish these guys.
Sure.
Well, anyway, that all said, let's get to today's guest. Our guest today is Superintendent Michael Chitwood of the Upper Darby Police Department. With regard to a little background, Superintendent Chitwood became a Philadelphia police officer in, I guess I should, can I say, in 1964. During that time, he was promoted to the homicide investigations unit. I will remind everyone that he had something to do with the Ira Einhorn case. After that, the chief of Middletown Bucks County Police, and then the chief of Portland, Maine Police for 17 some odd years, and the superintendent, and currently the superintendent of Upper Darby Police Department. So, Superintendent Chitwood, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We're very pleased that you're here, and I know that it's a very serious topic that we're going to talk about. So, Upper Darby Police Department, I think, or it was specific in Upper Darby, created this program, Change is Possible, related to the problems related to heroin addiction, problems related to heroin. Tell us about it.
Well, I think it's important to see how this program became what we put in place. In 2015, we looked at the numbers of heroin overdoses that we had in Upper Darby. And in 2015 alone, 20 people died as a result of a heroin overdose. And there were an additional 123 overdoses related directly to heroin. And we saw what a huge problem it was. But backdated until like December of 2014, when in that time frame, the district attorney in Delaware County introduced Narcan as a way to help save some of the people that were dying lives. When you look at the county, the numbers are staggering in Delaware County. When you look at the problem nationwide, especially in the Northeast Corridor, the problem is huge, from Maine all the way down through Baltimore and some of the southern states. So the heroin opioid problem exploded. And the reason it exploded was the following. Today, the heroin that's on the street is probably between 80 and 90% pure. Wow. But then what it's being cut with to make it more, give it more weight on the street is fentanyl, which is another opioid, which is 100 times more powerful than morphine, which is the base for the heroin. So the district attorney introduced the Narcan. Now, in the police world, I think we have to take a step back and see what police officers thought of heroin addicts. Dirtballs, scumbags, who cares, in reality. But then they started to look and see, it could be your brother, could be your son, could be your cousin, could be your aunt, could be your uncle, and it just exploded across the board.
Excuse me, how did that shift occur from it being, you know, the criminal?
Well, a heroin addict was always classified as a criminal.
Right.
Period. You know, he was a thief, he was a bum, he was a robber, period. That
but I mean,
was
wasn't there a time when he was a thief, a bum, and a robber, and now
Absolutely.
he's
It still is.
Okay.
Still is. But what has happened is the problem has exploded to such a point, and police were being called upon as first responders to respond to these homes. And years ago, heroin was a ghetto drug. I'm going back.
That's what I mean.
In the 60s. And now it's, quote, a middle-class drug, and everybody across the board is using heroin. So introduction of Narcan. And what the Narcan does is it's sprayed in the nostril of the individual who is unconscious, who is passed out, who is dying, whatever condition he or she is in. And that Narcan, the majority of the time, brings them back.
Wow.
It's amazing what it does. The unconscious person who is lethargic and ready to go under is hit with this Narcan through his nostril, and he or she is awakened. It's a miracle. So every police department in Delaware County started to be trained in the use of this Narcan. And then they started to be able to use the Narcan. So in Upper Darby, we started in the end of December of 2014. And we have used Narcan up to date, 79 times, and saved 68 lives.
Wow.
And only twice have we gone back to the same person of those saves, which shows you how big the problem is. Because initially, we're going to be going back to the same person. They may be Narcan 6 or 7 times, but they're all over different spots. And the paramedics are trained to use it. The first responders are trained to use it. So what we do in Upper Darby is we have the containers with the car keys. So every time a car is on the street, an officer's driving that car, he has the Narcan readily available. So it went from despising people who were addicted to heroin to saving their lives. And the dynamic of change was like unbelievable in a positive, proactive way. Well, then we decided, okay, the Narcan is saving people's lives, but then what happens after that? Because in my opinion, for a strong drug reduction program, a strong heroin problem, you need strict enforcement, you need education, and you need rehabilitation. By itself, any one of those 3-pronged approaches does not work, in my opinion, and I base that on years of experience. So what we decided to do, we need to afford people who are ill with the heroin addiction, not a criminal with the heroin, but ill with the heroin. Let's treat this like an illness or a disease, and let's stop treating it like a crime. Because when you start looking at the individuals, you know, they're athletes in school, they're honor students, they got good jobs, they got master's degrees from college, and they're whacked out on dope. You know, I mean, that's their life. Their life is to get high. That's it. So we researched and we found a program in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Gloucester apparently had a significant heroin problem, and they developed a program where they offered help or direction or detox from within the police department. So what we did is we got together with Guidenzia, which has been around forever. It's a drug and alcohol rehab facility. We met with the CEO and a couple of social workers and a drug rehab specialist, and we said, listen, we would like to partner with you. We would like you to be involved in this. We would make the police department a safe haven.
Wow.
And then we hooked up with the county drug and alcohol rehab. So if John Smith or Mary Jones came in and they voluntarily, they don't have an open court case, you know, this is not either or, you have to voluntarily come in. We now have the resources working through Guidenzia House, who immediately would send us a social worker, drug rehab person, and then they in turn would contact the county, and if you have insurance, there's a way to get into detox, the rehab. If you don't have insurance, there's a way to get into because most of what you're dealing with don't have insurance. You know, they're just people that just don't, they're surviving just to stay high, so they got no job, they got no support, they got nothing after years. So we still use the Narcan to save lives, but then we have a program in place that can get people into rehab.
So let me just say, it's one question. So it's like the day 2 kind of thing. They're not just saved and forgotten.
Right. Day
2 kind of. But I want to ask one question before we get too far away from it. You mentioned that the police department is like a safe haven. So anybody can show up under any circumstance? Like, how does that, we don't want people to see this and ever be afraid that, wait, I just use drugs, I'm not sure what's going to happen to me, or a parent comes across a kid that is high, and then next thing you know, they're not sure what to do, and they're afraid of the criminal side, and they don't end up doing anything kind of thing. So you mentioned safe haven. Like, before you jump to the next, can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
What we did is we put a preliminary protocol into place. Now, obviously, like anything else, you're going to change. And we just looked at opioid abuse, OxyContin, fentanyl, heroin, morphine, any type of opioid. That was the first, you had to be addicted to that. The second thing is you had to voluntarily come in. You could not be arrested. The third thing was that you needed, you couldn't have any more than 3 convictions for drug possession and 1 for drug trafficking. So you couldn't be a drug dealer and say all of a sudden, you know, I'm going to come in. And if you came in high or you came in whacked out, we would then evaluate you by sending you to the local hospital to have you evaluated and make sure that you were safe. Those were kind of like the 4 criteria that we used. Then we would contact Guidenzi and they would come in and then they would work with the system, because the system is really, really convoluted to get somebody into rehab. And what's better, 1 year, 6 months, 30 days, and experts disagree to where should it be locally, should it be away. And it's a huge quagmire that you have to get through to get somebody help. So with this system now, we can, God forbid somebody comes in and they want help, I can have them in some type of detox program within 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
Now, that being said, we've also learned, certainly, that it's usually more than one time that somebody's going to get rehabbed to where they're drug-free. And that's a difficult proposition, because you're looking at 6 or 7 times that you're in the system before, hopefully, you're free, you're clean. Since we started the program, I've had Narcotics Anonymous come in, and basically everybody that we're dealing with up to this point in time are former addicts, are people who have gone through the rehab process. So they're expert at it. And I'll give you a story. I met a couple weeks ago with two young guys from Narcotics Anonymous. And they just wanted to come in and let me know about their program and what they had available and everything else. I've learned more about rehabilitation in the last 6 months than I ever could imagine in 51 years. But they were talking about getting into the prisons and doing the Narcotics Anonymous, which is kind of like a 12-step program. You know, obviously detox is number 1, and then once you get somebody detoxed, then you go from there, and hopefully a 12-step program. And the one guy was a carpenter who was a politician at one time on one of the local council boards in Upper Darby, one of the communities in Upper Darby. And the other guy had a job in the insurance industry. Both of them heroin addicts, both of them clean and sober for, 2 years to 5 years. One guy spent X amount of years in prison. And they started talking about getting in, and a guy like me would be the guy who said, "No," I said, "I'm not the kind of guy that need you. You need to have somebody that can relate to somebody who was using heroin and what happens and how it can happen. I can talk about, hey, cops, police should be more responsive to and treating people as though they had a disease and not a crime or a criminal." And I said that you guys have more experience than I could ever have and more credibility than I could ever have in walking into a prison facility. So right now we're working with the local county prison up there to see if we can't get more drug openness inside the prisons. Narcotics Anonymous, I mean, certainly not treatment, but certainly they have their own system. But having somebody talk to those inmates that have an opioid problem and maybe convincing them that when they get out, there's an opportunity to clean your act up. So we got everything in place, everything's done. The first individual comes in, he's 24 years old. I personally spoke to him. Nice kid, whacked out. I said, well, you're going to need identification, 2 pieces of identification to get through the system. I'm telling you, you're not going to get it unless you have identification. We can be the first spot, but to go forward, you need to be able to say who you are, where you're from, all those types of things. Do you have insurance? Do you not have insurance? Never been arrested. And he's got 6-8 bag of heroin a day. So how you do that? You got to steal. You don't work.
Right.
You got to steal. So he says, I lost my license. Now this is Delaware County. This is Upper Darby Police Department. He said he was in Kensington, and the day, this would have been a Monday. Sunday he was in Kensington, figuring he was going to get his last fix. Going to get high. He got high in Kensington, and he lost his wallet, so he didn't have any identification on it. So then we had to move heaven and earth. We had to go into a computer through the state police and come up with his driver's license photo and photo ID. And then his mother had to get some other piece. And it's just so unbelievably difficult to try and get people who are so whacked out that they have no idea what day it is, you know. So I wished him luck, and I told him that, within 2 hours we had him out of the building. And the social worker from Guadenzia came in and drove him down to the facility in Delaware County that allowed the process to start.
And he just came to you knowing the program? And said, hey, I'm at a point where I'm a young guy. This is not a lifestyle that is good with a long life kind of thing. Right. I need to get some help and walk through the door.
Right.
And then you took him from basically A to Z to get him to that starting point.
We were the starting point.
Right.
And then A to Z was through the system.
Wow.
How are you, obviously by coming on shows like this, but how are you communicating to the community that this program is available and that it should be something that they should access?
Well, we were very lucky when we announced the program. Mayor McCosey, who's the mayor of Upper Darby, and myself got up publicly and talked about the program. So there was a lot of media coverage, print media, electronic media. We had all the TV stations in, we had all the print media in, we had the radios in. So it was a good send-off, a good start. And then now what we're doing is, if we Narcan somebody and bring them back to life, I personally am going out and knocking on the door of the individual we Narcan and say, look, this is available. There's no charge. We're not charging you. I'm not here to lock you up. I'm here to help you. I'm offering you help. But one of my lieutenants that runs the drug unit said to me, he said, you know what, boss? He said, if all they think about is getting high, they could care less about a program. It's going to take some type of traumatic event in their life. Now, if they get locked up during the court system, I don't have anything to do with that. I'm out of that. Mine is strictly volunteer. I need help. I need to get cured. I need to get help. I need whatever I need. Then I can help you.
Have you had any in that circumstance, like a parent come in with a kid? My kid has this problem.
Can you do that? Does it have to be the person?
Like, what do I do?
If they're under 18, they got to have a parent, because we can't deal with them if you're under 18 because you're a juvenile. I've had parents call and say they're at their wits' end.
Right.
One parent called. She got two boys in their 20s, both graduated one of the local high schools, both super athletes, both heroin addicts. What do I do? So I went and knocked on the door. And eventually I talked to both of them on the phone at separate times, told them what was available. They knew about the program. Oh yeah, well I'm working something with my father, or all the excuses. And as long as they want to get high, that's all they care about. Sticking that needle in their arm, or snorting the cocaine, or snorting the heroin, or however they're ingesting it.
Yeah. How does it? So, I'm sorry, but it seems like, what's the starting point for it now with so many? My thought has always been, when you talk about athletes, kid falls, playing sports, busts up his knee, doctor prescribes something that's legal and sort of mainstream. Next thing you know, they take it, feels better, feels good. They're taking it when they don't need it, and then you sort of spin out of control. Is that the starting point with lots of folks, or is that just one element?
I've been around long enough where I can back us up a little bit, okay? Years ago, and I came on the Philadelphia Police Department in 1964, so I was a young police officer. And in that area, 64, 65, marijuana started to become, or did become, the gateway drug. And I can tell you from hanging on a corner in South Philadelphia that marijuana was the thing. I mean, I would be in cars and guys would be smoking joint and the whole thing. 20 years old, I become a cop. This is probably 18 and a half, 19 years old I was. By the time I was on the police department 3 or 4 years, every one of my friends was a heroin addict. Every one of my friends was a heroin addict.
Your friends on the department or on
no,
the,
friends
from
on
the
the
old
street.
neighborhood?
From the old neighborhood.
Right.
I mean, then I went in a narcotics squad and I was locking up guys that I went to school with and grew up with.
Right.
So back in the late 60s, early 70s, marijuana was the gateway drug. It was marijuana, then it was pills, then it was heroin. Today, the big starting point is OxyContin. Other opioids, most of which were legally prescribed to an athlete, to somebody that got in a car accident, to somebody who fell. And then they started to make their way on the street. So that one pill, OxyContin, charge you $40 for one pill on the street. $50.
Wow.
For one pill. Now, Joey no longer could get the pills from Dr. X, so then he started writing bad scripts, stealing, robbing, pillaging, and then it just took a life of its own. So a fairly significant amount of drugs were now becoming on the street illegal. Peer pressure, the injury started with the introduction of these different opioids on the street illegally. Well, all of a sudden, how are you going to support, if you got a 4-day-a-pill habit, you're spending $200 a day. Well, for $200 a day, you can get, 40 bags of heroin or something like that. Wow. So what happened is the heroin became so much more prevalent and so much more cheaper and so much more high. The high was unbelievable. It was immediate because A, the purity, and then B, when it started to be cut with fentanyl. Fentanyl is what's killing everybody. When you find a batch of dope that's cut with fentanyl, that's what's killing the individual addict.
It's amazing. So, well, we have to,
unfortunately, they're telling us we only have 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Do you have first of all, you have to come back at some point and give us an update on how the program is going, but can you give us in 30 seconds, can you give us what the next step is?
The next step is hopefully the government, whether it be the federal government or the state government, allocates more resources for rehabilitation. Because you're not going to lock your way up out of this problem. It just is not going to happen. The educational piece has to start again. For years ago, they had the DARE program. They had Officer Friendly. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be what it was back in the 70s and 80s, but I think, like I said earlier, the three-pronged approach, enforcement, education, rehabilitation, and we lack tremendously in the area of rehabilitation, and that's where we need to go. We need to rehabilitate these people that have this illness.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Hey, we really appreciate you being here. This is terrific, and I'm going to get us out of here. We talk about first responders all the time, helping out in your community. Another piece to this is you got to be involved. There's no question about it. We have lots of people out there helping us when sometimes we don't even realize they're out there. So keep an eye out for all of the police, the local law enforcement, your EMTs, your fire. They're working hard for you even when you are not in need of them at that moment. And programs like this are out there. So please make sure you check with your local law enforcement. You can talk to them about it if it's not part of your community. And maybe it's something that can come into effect for you. So we want to thank Superintendent Chitwood and all the first responders out there. Don't forget, raceonmain.com, and we'll see you out on Main Street. Thanks, everybody.